Hi guys, Jess Hartley here. Welcome to the first of what I'm hoping will be an ongoing vlog entry called Vanity Shelf. Like many writers, I have a collection of all of the things that I've written. It's kind of what keeps me going a lot of times because writing can be really lonely work. But I thought what I would do is take an opportunity to pick one product or project that I've worked on in the past and share a little bit with you about kind of when it came out, what the product was, what part of it that I wrote if it's a group project, and a little bit about kind of what was going on with me as a writer when I was writing it, kind of a little behind the scenes look. I've worked on a lot of different role-playing game projects and a lot of other kinds of things as well, short stories and nonfiction essays and that kind of thing. So hopefully we'll be able to get kind of a really broad range of information about different things, and maybe we'll be able to talk about some of the products for games that you really enjoy playing. I hope so anyway. So the first thing we're going to talk about in this entry is going to be all about In Northern Twilight. In Northern Twilight was the very first novel that I ever wrote. It was produced by White Wolf for their Exalted game line. Now, Exalted had a trilogy of novels released between 2001 and 2002. They were all three written by Richard Dansky, and they were Chosen of the Sun, Beloved of the Dead, and Children of the Dragon. White Wolf decided that they wanted to put out another set of novels set in that same world. And rather than hire one author to write all three of the books as they had with the original trilogy, they gave several different authors the opportunity to make pitches and eventually write books for that series. How I came to be one of the authors in this second series is actually kind of a funny story. I hadn't written anything for the role-playing game industry before. I'd never written anything novel length before. I had spent the year before that basically taking any writing job that I could to hone my skills and learn about what it was like to be a professional writer. And when I say any job, I mean any job. I wrote greeting card script. I wrote those little articles that you get in those free newspapers that are outside of restaurants. I wrote articles on what the Washington State flower and bird and nut were for those. I mean, I just wrote anything that anyone would pay me $5 to write so that I could start building my professional resume and get some experience with deadlines and writing to spec and all that sort of thing. So after spending a year doing that, keep in mind, I knew nothing about the publishing industry. I realized in retrospect that the thing I really didn't like about being a writer was having to go out and hunt down all of these little jobs all of the time. So I thought, in my ignorance, wouldn't it be easier if I just wrote novels? Because, then I only really have to pitch and sell one of them or so a year, as opposed to, doing several a month like I was with small articles. Wouldn't that be so much easier? Like I said, I had no idea how difficult it was to really pitch, let alone write a novel. So at the time I was playing LARP very actively, live action role playing, and I was playing in a World of Darkness game called Werewolf the Apocalypse. At the time, White Wolf was putting out quite a bit of fiction related to their World of Darkness lines. There were changeling novels, werewolf novels, wraith novels, vampire novels. It was very prolific. And so I thought, oh my goodness, this is right up my alley. Why not? So I pitched a trilogy concept to the folks at White Wolf based on a kinfolk character that I had been playing long time in the live action role-playing game that I'd been playing in. And I sent it in, followed the submission guidelines. That's a very important piece of information if you're wanting to become a professional writer. Always follow the submission guidelines. So I followed the submission guidelines, sent in a proposal and some samples as they'd ask for this novel trilogy that I wanted to write. And they liked the writing, Unfortunately, my timing was really bad because unbeknownst to me or pretty much anyone that wasn't working for White Wolf at that point, they were getting ready to end their old World of Darkness line and start their new World of Darkness line. So they were wrapping up all of their old World of Darkness projects, including fiction related to Werewolf the Apocalypse, and getting ready to launch a whole new series of games, which of course the fiction for that would be very different because they're for different game lines. So they wrote me back, and I was thrilled that I didn't just get an outright rejection because, as I said, this was my first novel pitch whatsoever. And they said, hey, we like your writing, but we can't really use it right now. We can't use this idea right now. We would, however, like to invite you to pitch for this other game line that we're running, Exalted. We're going to be doing some fiction novels for that, and we're taking submissions. So if you would like, we can send you some information about Exalted, and we'd love to see a pitch from you. Now, mind you, at the time, again, I had no idea what was even feasible to do as a novelist. And the wonderful thing about that was I enthusiastically said, yes, I would love to research and come up with a novel pitch for this game I've never even heard of. I can do that. Of course I can. So they were kind enough to send me a big box of materials. This is back during the time period where publishing was a lot more flexible about that kind of thing. And they sent me literally a box that was probably 2 foot long by a foot, full of source material. And for the next couple of weeks, I did nothing but eat, sleep, and drink Exalted. I went from not knowing anything about the game line or the world or the setting or anything like that to being, kind of a very short-term expert on it. And so what they had wanted for proposals, there is, in Exalted, the characters tend to form, like werewolves form packs and vampires form coteries, the Exalted tend to form this group that they call a perfect circle, or a circle. If you have one Exalted from each cast in a circle, it's called a perfect circle because they're considered to be balanced for each other. And this circle of canon characters that they wanted featured included 5 different characters. There was Swan, Ariana, Dace, Panther, and Harmonious Jade, one of each of the 5 casts. And we were invited to pick 1 or 2 of the canon characters that we liked best and pitch a proposal for a story that involved them. I chose, after reading as much as I could about all 5 of them, I chose Swan and Ariana because they were 2 of my absolute favorite characters. Ariana is kind of a well-meaning but ice-hearted knowledge seeker. She is kind of not in touch with her emotions, and because of her background, she was kind of discriminated against and told that she couldn't learn things, so she went about trying to educate herself and become a scholar in her own way. And Swan is an amazing diplomat. He's very charming and kind of devil-may-care, but he's very, very loving individual as well. And the 2 of them just really, really appealed to me. So what I did is I went through the core books and I found places where Swan and Ariana were used as examples. Little tidbits of their back history were offered, and I kind of made a timeline of what those looked like and what else was happening in the world of Exalted at the time. And I decided to set my novel kind of in one of those spaces between time periods that were mentioned. So it was before Swan and Ariana actually became part of what would eventually be their perfect circle, when they first were meeting and bonding together, and the first kind of adventure that they went on as partners. This adventure also included dealing with a character named Jürgen Kaneko, nicknamed Bull of the North, who is an ice walker, which was a in Exalted is a kind of a barbarian tribe of Norsemen, Northmen, I guess, who their culture hadn't been very well fleshed out yet in Exalted. And I, as those of you who know me know, I love all things Viking and Scandinavian. At the time I was playing SCA, the Society for Creative Anachronism, very heavily. I actually met my husband through the SCA, and he plays a Norse persona. His character that he plays, or his persona that he plays in the SCA, is Norse. And so it was a wonderful opportunity not to replicate the Norse culture, but to integrate it with other cultures which were from areas that are similar to what Jürgen's area was from in Exalted. I incorporated in some Sami culture aspects and aspects from other kind of nomadic northern cultures. And it was really a great opportunity to be able to flesh out a part of Exalted that hadn't been fleshed out very much. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So I wrote a proposal, and I sent it in. And to be honest, I didn't expect to ever hear back from them, because what do I know? You know, I'm still very, very new at this. To my surprise, a couple of weeks later, I get an email that says, "Hey, we liked your proposal and we would like to invite you to write this novel for us." And I was so surprised. I literally had to go get my husband and have him read the email as well and say, I think they want me to write a book for them. And he was like, "Yeah, honey, they do." So I sat down, and of course I accepted. And I sat down and I wrote in Northern Twilight. It was very challenging. As anyone who has, tackled and completed their first novel knows, you don't know how complex it's going to be. I mean, writing a novel it's more than just writing a really long short story. You have to be able to keep track of story threads throughout, a long piece. I think in Northern Twilight was around 90,000 words. And you've got to keep track of story arcs. You've got to have character development for not just your main characters, but for all of the characters in the story. They need to grow and be displayed as fully three-dimensional characters. Just the simple tracking of things. I had these horses in Northern Twilight, and they kept disappearing. Like, I'd write a scene and they'd run off, and the next scene they were back in the story again, and I hadn't given any explanation why. So when I finally got it written and went to go do all of my edits, one of the editing notes that came back is, "Where did these horses keep coming from?" So that was pretty amusing. Another very funny thing happened in relation to In Northern Twilight. After it was written and published, my older daughter, who at the time was, I'm gonna say probably around 12 or 13. This was around 2003, 2004. We had gone to the bookstore to find my books on the shelf for the first time. And it was a big family outing. They were all very, very proud and very, very supportive. My entire family, my husband, my son, and both of my daughters had just been amazingly supportive the entire time that I'd been working on this. And so we went on a family outing to a bookstore to find my books on the shelf for the first time. And we, of course, bought one, even though I'd gotten an author's copy before. We were heading home, and my daughter was in the back seat, and she was flipping through the book. And she calls up to the front seat and she says, "Hey, Mom, I just found something really cool on page 117. I'm like, okay. She says, "It's your name," because on every page down at the bottom it had the author's name on it. And she was so excited that my name was on the book throughout. And to be honest, so was I, because, I mean, it's your first novel, and there's just something near and dear to your heart about something like that. So, In Northern Twilight was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it. It got my start really working for White Wolf, not just on that project, but they then afterwards hired me to write a novel connected to the new werewolf line that they were doing, Werewolf the Forsaken. Unfortunately, though, that whole project, all of those novels were canceled after completion but before publication, so they now exist only in this nebulous state of having been purchased but never published. So I can't do anything with them, and they probably will never do anything with them. So, but that then led me, because I was familiar with Werewolf the Forsaken before it actually came out, I was invited by Ethan Scamp, who is an amazing person, to work on one of the role-playing game books as opposed to the fiction lines for Werewolf the Forsaken. It was the supplement that would eventually be published as Predators, which features a lot of spirits and that sort of thing. And that became, writing spirits for Predator became my first role-playing game product, non-novel type product, which then led to a whole slew of other role-playing game products that I've worked on over the next 10 years. And some of those are going to be featured in later episodes of Vanity Shelf. So for now, I think we'll wrap things up. That's kind of a little bit more about In Northern Twilight than you probably knew. It is no longer in print production. You still can find, if you're curious, there are back copies, for sale, used copies on Amazon. I'm going to hold this up. That is Ariana on the front, and it was a great deal of fun to work on, and I really enjoyed it. Keep tuned in for more episodes of Vanity Shelf. They'll all be in a particular playlist on my YouTube channel here, so if you want to just kind of skip through the different products that I've worked on as they start to come out, that's a great way to do so. Also, be sure to like and subscribe and click that bell so that when new Vanity Shelves or other vlog episodes come out, you don't miss them. Thanks a lot, and I look forward to talking to you guys all later. Bye!